Okay, so we're live on Facebook. And if anyone wants to give us a thumbs up or a smiley face or make a comment to say that you can see us okay. Okay, Cindy says hi. All right, so we are talking with Shannon today. Shannon is an environmental engineer, and we're really excited to talk to her. And hopefully you can use it for your eco badges, eco explorer, eco advocate, eco trekker. Hopefully she'll inspire you to look at some of those badges. We hope you are all safe. We hope you're healthy. We hope you're doing okay, washing your hands. And we're glad that you're watching and staying connected with Girl Scouts. So Shannon, why don't you start off and introduce yourself and what you do?
All right. So again, for those of you, if you heard it earlier, I'm Shannon DeVivo. I'm an engineer, environmental engineer at Olson. I work out of the Omaha, Nebraska office, but Olson is a Nebraska-based company. Our headquarters is in Lincoln. We have several offices, mainly throughout the Midwest. We're a full service consulting firm, engineering consulting firm. So we do everything from like landscape architecture to site development. We have transportation engineers that design, transportation, roads. We have structural engineers that work on buildings, mechanical, plumbing engineers that work on buildings, railroad, like signals, things like that. And then we have just general civil engineers that work on like the site development side of things. So if you're constructing a strip mall or somewhere where there's going to be a lot of businesses, then you have to design the roads, you have to design storm sewer systems, just so people can access it and it works without getting flooded, without destroying the environment, things like that. So.
Okay, that's really interesting. So I think, let me see, I have like a list of questions for you. So can you tell us what a day looks like for you and your job?
Sure. Most engineers in general will be in an office setting most of the time. We have cubicles, and then so usually I'm working with a bunch of different types of engineers. I work with a lot of actually scientists, biologists. So we'll work together on a project just to make sure that the engineers designing these buildings and things like that aren't going to create a problem with the environment. They're not going to cause more pollution. And then we'll also I contact clients a lot, whether it's via phone, email. I deal with clients, probably on a daily basis. And then I also do a lot of site visits. So you can get up and get out of your desk once in a while if you're an engineer. Even aside from just environmental, you want to see that what you designed is actually being built how you designed it. So I'll go and tour a manufacturing facility, any sort of other facility that might have large quantities of chemicals on the facility, just to make sure that they're being safe with those chemicals that they're storing. And then I also will do groundwater sampling and soil sampling, as well as soil gas sampling. So we'll go out with like a drill rig that spins into the ground or even just pushes down into the ground. And it can help us collect soil samples and groundwater samples and even soil gas samples. So we'll pull up air from like within the ground, and we can test to see if there's chemicals in there that might cause issues for people down the road. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what made you interested in having this kind of job and being an environmental engineer?
So I always wanted to do something that would help with protecting the environment. I wasn't sure which route that would be. And then I always enjoyed math and science when I was in high school. Senior year of high school, when I was trying to figure out what to major in college, I was looking through really the University of Nebraska at Omaha's career or college catalog and looking through all the majors. And I really focused on science careers, either math careers or looking through the engineering careers. And it listed the courses that you would be able to take with some of these different majors. And civil engineering is the one that I ended up deciding on because it had the environmental component to it. But then it also allows you to get exposed to other types of engineering. So if I decided that maybe environmental wasn't the route I wanted to go, I looked at transportation engineering as well. And having that background, being able to say throughout my career, I really like doing this type of work, or I want to work for this type of organization. Environmental just ended up appealing to me just because I felt like it was one of the ones where I could really make a difference.
Yeah, that's true. So what were some of your classes like in college, or what were some of your favorite ones that you took?
One of my favorite ones that I took was actually environmental engineering is pretty similar, or you take a lot of the same courses as like a water resources class. And so that class really looks at how rain might be affecting flooding. You look at building dams. You'll look at water storage capacity. So I found that class really interesting because it's something, especially now that we deal with all the flooding that's been going on. That I took three classes in progression, so they all built on top of each other. So you could see how something you learned in one class was applied to the next class pretty equally. So
yeah. So what sort of classes were you taking in high school then? That kind of, because we have a lot of high schoolers who might be thinking about this. What kind of classes do high schoolers take to start them on this environmental engineer path?
I suggest taking as much math and science as you can. You don't have to love math and science to be an engineer. You have to be able to do them. I took calculus in high school, which I think can scare a lot of people away, but you'll do the calculus in college. You need to understand where your equations are coming from. But I have not touched a calculus equation since I graduated. So it's important to have that background, and especially if you can take those courses in high school and get credit for them in high school, then you're not paying for them in college. And then you might just have an easier time in college if you already have that background. So I took, all the AP classes that I could, advanced placement, so chemistry, anatomy, the math courses, even English. A lot of people think that engineers don't focus as much on writing. We're not we're math and science people. But especially with engineering consultants, you really need to know how to communicate with clients. A lot of the engineers that I work with, we work on public projects. So we're going to public meetings. We need to understand how to speak to the public in ways that gain their trust. So, all of those classes are important.
Yeah. So what are, like, if thinking back on some of the projects you've done and some of the work that you've done, what are some things that you've done that you really feel proud of and that you feel like really made a big difference in your community?
One of the coolest projects that we just did about a year ago, it's been in the news within the last 6 months to a year, was there was a former dry cleaning facility in Bellevue, which used, so dry cleaners use this chemical. And back in the, in the 1960s, the 1970s, even before the Environmental Protection Agency created some of these laws to help people from getting polluted, to keep companies from dumping stuff out the back door. A lot of dry cleaners would have chemical releases, and nobody really thought about what was happening to it. There's a connection between what you pour on the ground, and then if it makes it down to the groundwater, so water within the soil, then it can travel, and it can travel, miles. It'll eventually reach like a river or stream for the most part. And so in this area, there was contamination found, and if it's in the water, it can actually become like a gas or a vapor and make it into people's basements. We actually went and did sampling at some of these businesses and some houses within the area to see if that contamination was actually making it into people's homes. And so based on what we found, it actually went to the Environmental Protection Agency for them to install some systems that actually help remove that from people's houses. So.
Cool. So you helped find the contamination and track where it was going and that kind of stuff. Is that, and
Yep.
Then you turned it over to the EPA? Is that kind of what you did?
Yep. So yeah, so we did the sampling for the state of Nebraska, and then based on our results and our report, so environmental engineers, like I mentioned, English being an important part of what classes you should take in high school. I write a lot of reports. I have to write what we did, what the data says, make my conclusions, make recommendations, things like that. So the state took the sample results, sent it to the EPA, and then based on that, the EPA got involved and came out and kind of took over from there, just based on how things progressed. So,
and they cleaned it up?
They're still working on it. So environmental is definitely not a career where you might work on a project today and it'll be done in 2 weeks. We do have some projects like that, but there are a lot of projects where they've been cleaning things up for 30 or 40 years, and it's going to keep going for another 50 to 100. So
yeah, it's really, really important stuff though, for sure. So what do you like about your job?
I like making a difference. One of the other sides of what I do, besides just investigations, is I also do facility compliance. So I'll go out to a facility and tell them whether or not they're abiding by laws and regulations. And even if they are, maybe give them some better ideas as to, okay, maybe you should move this chemical away from the door. And move it back toward the back corner. So if there's a release, it's not likely to make it out the door, or maybe put in a sunken floor so that a release isn't making it out the door. So you can really see what you're doing making an impact. And then it's, you still do get out a little bit and get away from your desk a little bit and get to interact with people. So I kind of like that.
Yeah. So it seems like a type of job where you have to have like a really logical brain, but also have to be able to communicate some of those complicated thoughts to lots of different people, which it's an interesting job. Certainly, like you have to be the right person to fit into that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I think that's probably about it for now for questions, unless there's anything else you wanted to share about, your job or what you like, or tips or inspiration for girls who might want to become an engineer someday.
Yeah, I'd say if you're interested in engineering or even just science careers in general, it's important to just keep your mind open to things like that. If you can handle the math and science, it's always easier in college to change your career down to, like it's going to be easier to go from an engineering major to a communications major if you want to go that route. But if you start as a communications major and don't have that math and science background, and then by junior year you decide you want to go into engineering, it's going to be a lot harder for you, as opposed to if you had just taken those math and science courses to begin with. So always do what you can in that aspect. Do a lot of research. Like I said, I found the career that I wanted to go into by looking through the college catalog and seeing what type of course that might actually entail. And then also, if you're looking at maybe a medical field or things like that, engineering is a great background for going into the medical field. There's a lot of engineering that's kind of related to medicine, but it doesn't necessarily require you to become a medical doctor. Engineering is a great background for going to law school. So there's a lot of things you can do with an engineering degree besides just engineering as well. And then we also do one of the other things that we didn't touch upon, but I actually manage a lot of projects. So I deal with the accounting and the budget. There's a lot of business side to engineering as well. So if you're more a business person, but you really like the math and science, just remember that you could go into engineering and then eventually go more into the project management side of things as opposed to staying the engineering side of things. So there's a lot of ways to kind of evolve as an engineer. So
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Well, Shannon, and for everyone for listening. And definitely keep in mind some of those eco badges if you're interested in this kind of work, this engineering stuff, the eco badges and the engineering badges and journeys, both. So if this is interesting to you, that's kind of where you could go from Girl Scouts. But we are going to stop the live stream here in just a minute. Don't forget, we have lots of great programming for you every day. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, thanks for watching.